right, this is Michele Allman and
Alex Allman.
We are here with our Red Notebook podcast talking about family, faith, and business. So today we're going to dig in a little bit, Alex. I think let's talk about family and
what's it like working with family?
What's it like working with family? Well, you know, it's funny because in the United States, I think there are tons of small businesses that are family,
many.
Right?
Yeah, I know a lot of people who have family businesses.
And I think what's cool about that is that that is the American dream, you know, to be able to, how awesome is it that you can create a business, you can create a lifestyle, you can create like a revenue source and bundle that up with your family and spending time with your family, right?
I was just about to say, as you were saying that, I started to think to myself, but some people might say that too much time with your family can be complicated.
Yeah.
Especially depending on your family dynamic.
You know, and what's interesting about that, like when you think about families and the way we communicate, like every family's like its own little culture, its own little tribe. Mm-hmm. And, you know, there's that saying where you can't choose your family, you can choose your friends. And sometimes your friends are closer than your family. But, you know, it's unique to every single family.
Yeah.
And like what's intriguing to me, and it kind of speaks to the whole human nature thing and society, is the layers, like how we communicate and how we process information is intrinsic not only to who you are as a person, but the experiences you've had.
Oh,
right?
100%.
So it's like super interesting to me that having even 3 kids, and we've got to frame it up a little bit and talk about our family and the dynamics, who's in our family, you know, who are the characters in the family. We could write a freaking soap opera, I think, in some cases. Like all families have their stuff, right?
Yeah.
But I think what's really intriguing is that, especially when you have more than one child, that you can express something to all 3 in the same room at the same time, and the information processes through a different filter.
Yeah, each person perceives things differently.
Right? Yeah, I think that's super interesting. So with our family, we have... so we'll start with like the background, going all the way back, like family tree for a second. So what's really cool about our family, I think, is that we have 2 fundamentally different backgrounds, like 2 full-on different branches of the tree,
different
right?
backgrounds.
So on Papa's side, my dad, Papa, you have the immigrant family.
Yes.
Right? So Eastern European, came over from Hungary, Lithuania. Not a whole lot of knowledge back, you know, going back to how they got here. Yeah. We know that they hit New York, and we know that the name changed, and it's a Lithuanian last name, Uzanis, but it changed from whatever ridiculously many syllables original name it was, and it was shortened to Uzanis. Now, why Uzanis, I'm not sure, because it's like... not easy.
Well, and when you were growing up, I'm sure people said like Uranus or something.
It was
like
Uranus, Uranus. That was a good one. Tried growing up with that. That was a little painful.
Nobody knew how to spell it.
But it was hard to spell, hard to pronounce.
Yeah.
It's like interesting that was what was chosen. But we are the only Uzanis family in the entire country, which is
super cool.
The cool thing about that whole immigrant story. But so my great grandparents, who I only knew one, they had passed away long before I was born. But you know, hardcore Lithuanian Hungarian, that Eastern European immigrant, and grandma and grandpa on Papa's side were like the president and treasurer of the Lithuanian club in Rockford, Illinois. What? You know, so it was a very different. It was that Eastern European immigrant.
He had a very stern background.
Background. It was not a super warm and fuzzy background. It was a very much the save every penny, work your ass off. Yeah. There is definitely something to be said in that immigrant background, because there was a save everything. Yeah. You know, it was, if you looked at Grandma and Grandpa's garage, it was stacked, you know, floor to ceiling. I don't remember ever their garage.
Well, I remember going to Grandma Ollie's when she was at the assisted living home, and her house was filled to the brim
with stuff.
Just stuff everywhere. She had a garage, and I remember opening the door, and it's just boxes everywhere.
Yep. And it was that whole mindset that you couldn't let anything go. It had value somewhere.
I think Nana's side has some of that too, don't you think?
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit. So you've got that, and then you got Nana's side of the family, which is definitely, it's blue blood Mayflower Society. So they've done their family tree dating back to the Pilgrims. In fact, that family tree dates all the way back to, Christ. I think they actually have gone that far back.
That's insane.
They've done some really good research on the family. In fact, that should be another topic we talk about, family trees.
Yeah, that'd be really cool
the depth
to
of that.
explore.
But their background is very much in more society. But what's interesting about Nana's side of the family is that they came over on the Mayflower. So we date all the way back to Brewster.
Yeah.
And I can remember in grade school thinking it was so cool and doing a book report on stuff like that.
Yeah.
And, that whole background. But direct descendants of President Adams and, a lot of the connectivity there. But they were entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So, and Nana's side of the family, they never worked for anybody else.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Musicians,
I see that a lot.
artists, owned property. And then in the Depression, they lost everything. So the family lost everything.
And that would explain Nana's hoarding tendencies.
Yeah.
Nana, you're not a hoarder, but you're borderline hoarder.
And, here's the interesting thing, and this is where you build respect and where what's so intriguing to me, and you're right, is those filters. Like, I've asked them on occasion, why do you have this deep emotional connection to an
things.
object,
Yeah,
right?
to things.
And a good example, I'm going to share a little story. This is funny. We're kind of bouncing around a little bit, and we'll get to a point, but a really funny story is that talking about family and business. So I was, this is long into I'd started working for Nana and Papa.
Yeah.
And so I was managing people, and we were in the warehouse, and I was doing a cleanup because we had this thing about Nana and Papa, would go on a trip. And so everybody, we get together, we clean out the warehouse. And it was, get a dumpster and we'd move quick. Well, at this particular time, there was a butcher block table, and I grew up at this table. It was our kitchen table. I remember it distinctly. It was a very heavy piece of wood. And at this point, it had broken a number of times, been glued back together, and was leaning in the warehouse up against a wall, and it was fairly unsafe, right? And so this was one of those moments of deep clean. And I thought, oh man, this table's been broken a bunch of times. It's just sitting here. It's been sitting here for like 2 years.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and get rid of it. So we put it in the dumpster. And I thought, no way. Like, it's been literally sitting here.
Yeah, she's never going to notice.
Right, with a variety of things. Never going to notice it.
Boy, were you wrong.
Oh my gosh. They came back and Papa flipped a lid, like lost it.
I can't even
lost
imagine.
it. And I'm like, what is going on? How could this be such a big deal, right? So, talking about the navigating the dynamics of family and business. So there was a number of things in this whole experience that kind of talks to the challenges, right?
Yes.
So challenge number one was the emotion that ties to family in a business setting.
Well, and the comfortability to express those emotions. Mm-hmm. I've noticed that supremely in our family.
Yep.
There's something about being, and I do this to my mom all the time, there's just a level of comfort where you just say what you want to say.
Yeah. And knowing, like, even though you're a professional and this isn't the right setting for that conversation, it's a very difficult separation to make, right?
Yeah.
So when he lost his shit, and seriously, lost it, it was like awkward because everyone in the office is like, what is going on?
What do we do?
And I was dumpster diving for a piece of wood, and then taking a step back and saying, okay, so there's got to be something to this. There's something deeper here. Like, you don't lose your shit over something like that unless there's something deeper. And so it led to a conversation that was really interesting. And that was, tell me more about why.
Yeah.
So I was, obviously a little bit like, what? Pissed at the moment.
You're far from the type of person to keep things.
No.
Items are not important to you. They have no sentiment.
Right, which is the interesting thing.
Very interesting.
Like, why? I'm a child of that. I'm a product of that. I saw what it took for Nana and Papa to succeed. Kind of a little going back in the storyline. Growing up, Nana and Papa were, they had nothing.
Yeah.
They worked very hard.
Section 8 housing.
Yeah. Papa had been in the military.
Yeah.
And Nana they had both graduated from college. Well, I say Nana graduated from college. That's where they met. Papa actually got kicked out of college. So your fault, Papa, for the party, for the party personality. But had then gone into the military and had been an officer and was now actively working in the reserves. And we had moved to Champaign-Urbana and had very little. And it was, Section 8 housing and not fancy. They worked very, very hard. I can remember a sense of absolute certainty as a child that things were always going to be okay, that we were always safe.
Yeah.
Never, ever, ever as a kid felt fearful. And it's really, I think that speaks volumes to the certainty that they provided. But the interesting thing is that, like, I saw that. So, I still was confused as to this connection to an object because we didn't have a lot of stuff. And that was it.
Yep.
Right?
I was just about to say.
So that was it. It was about the fact that table represented their ability to purchase a piece of furniture that was pricier than the crapola that we had growing up.
Well, I'm sure that they had taken a lot of hand-me-downs. There wasn't the opportunity to ever buy those things.
Right. So
and I think that's also why Nana, when we were kids, and I gotta say she spoiled the crap out of us grandkids. I would be going to a Hapkido class, which is martial arts, if you don't know. And I didn't want to go. I was not a sports person. I hated it. And she would bribe me by saying, I'll take you to Tuesday morning, which is next door, and get you a Barbie doll. And we'd have a collection of Barbie dolls at her house. And she's the type of person where you totally destroyed the Barbie, but she doesn't want to give it away or throw it away because she's like, oh, another grandkid could use it.
Yeah.
When it just sits there in the bin.
So it's the connectivity. And so the whole point of this, like tying back to family and business, is really about, like, in a family dynamic in business, there are variables in how we've processed information, right? The filters. And when you think about it, just even from an understanding communication with different groups and friend groups and like your siblings and all that, we all process the information presented to us through the filters by which we've experienced our lives. Yeah. Right? So that filter varies for different people, even in the very same exact situation. Yeah. And why does that happen? And it's kind of like the combination of the product of environment and personality. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. 100%.
So when you bring it into business,
God.
Now you've got the family emotional dynamic. You've got the filters by which family that tribe has created its communication style. Yeah. Then you introduce people that aren't in that family tribe into this family environment. And you've got to navigate that. And then you have different levels of, like, some families are very disconnected. Yeah. And they can separate, while other families are like, this is it. Opening the kimono. This is the full raw emotion, It's really interesting. So, I'm curious with you. So growing up with Nana and Papa both being very entrepreneurial. Yeah. Right. And so my experience was this. Never even thought about it. So when I look back, Papa had a job when we were little. Yeah. Nana stayed home. Mm-hmm. She got her degree, but she had a degree in teaching. She taught for a little bit when they were engaged and got married. And then when we were born, she stayed home with us, which was awesome. Papa always he was the king of sales. Like, the man
Papa
could sell you dirty underwear.
Salesman.
Yeah. He's a storyteller. He's great with words. He could articulate extremely well. And so he always had a sales role. And it wasn't until, and this is really intriguing, Nana decided, one of the things that one of her roadblocks in kind of achievement was her shyness, right? Which you definitely inherited. And it was more of the fear, like the fear of the unknown, the fear of what someone might say, that kind of thing.
Thinking that in my head as you said it.
So that shyness really held her back. So there came a point in time, and I think it was in junior high school, where there was an opportunity for her to start a business. And it was all about this idea that, one, coming from a very entrepreneurial background where it seemed very natural to take the risk, but also this deep desire to be independent and be able to move beyond this thing, this shyness, like, wall that kept her from being able to get out there. So when she started it and then Papa came on board, my experience was, this is all I knew, really.
Yeah, it's normal.
Right? It was normal. Yeah. It was normal for them to talk nonstop about business. Yeah. Right? It was normal for them their traveling was related to a trade show or a conference. It was normal to have product samples laying all over the house.
Yeah.
And it started even before Nana started the business that is today, but they did Amway. They did like jewelry sales. They did like all kinds of different stuff. They had all kinds of things that they did. And I can remember in high school having Amway parties and doing makeup because Amway had like everything from cleaning products to, nutrition bars. It was just crazy. And it was very normal.
Yeah.
And so I think that's transcended,
100%.
and then all through high school, I was a serious pain in the ass. I sucked. I was a horrible teenager. College dropout, really created all kinds of challenges for my parents, and never in a million years would have been like, oh yeah, I'm taking over. I'm gonna work with them and I'm gonna take over the businesses and I'm gonna make that work. And no way. But it's almost like fate had a path, right?
Yeah. I don't think I could see you doing anything else. I mean, for me, it's the same experience, except for I didn't have to go through the poverty. I've never been through that. I don't know what that's like because by the time I could remember anything, you were already sitting in the boss seat. And so I got to watch that. I grew up in her office. Like, I can vividly tell you every detail of the first office they had in Burridge. And I could say every room, every crack, every crevice, because I lived there.
Yeah,
I basically spent most of my time there. All the employees knew me. I knew every single one of them. It was a normal thing. And my friends were like, what's it like to have your mom, like, be the boss of a business? Because when you're young, you don't know what CEO means, you don't know any of that. And I was like, I don't know, I don't really know the difference. Like, what's it like for, because half my friends didn't even know what their parents did. I'd ask them, what does your parents do for work? Oh, I don't know. Like, you don't know what your parent does for work? Like, I grew up in her office. What is that? What do you mean? And so to me, there's no other alternative. I would have never pictured our lives any other way. I don't think it could have ever gone another way.
Yeah, it's interesting that so many kids don't know what their parents do.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
Now you think about it too, because you knew since you were as early as you can remember, you knew what your parents were doing. But I don't know, the dynamic in family business is very interesting because you have the freedom to do things like I would go to my Nana's house when my mom was working, and my Nana would be working at her house. So it's not like I wasn't in an environment where people were working, but I got to kind of be passed around from family member to family member because that was easier. I did have babysitters, but the people that I remember the most are my family watching me or being in the office. That's what I remember the most of. Is spending my time that would be with a babysitter in an office.
And the best, having your walker, like your little walker roaming around the office. And, and I think again, going back to the family business dynamic, it's like there's such a variable. And why do some families work so well together and some families don't? It just is never going to happen.
Well, and what a lot of people don't realize, like a lot of my friends, they think of it as something that's, always sunshine and rainbows. Like, oh, awesome, you get to work with your mom. That's great, which it is. Don't get me wrong. But for example, like Thanksgiving, it's not like your normal Thanksgiving. You're not sitting at a table chatting about the flowers in the garden. You're sitting at the table listening to conversations about margins or what products are moving or how can we improve business. And that was normal to me. Like sitting at Thanksgiving, me and my cousins are sitting there talking about whatever kids talk about. And you hear the head of the table talking to everybody else, all the other adults, about business. And a lot of my friends were like, they talk about business at Thanksgiving? I'm like, yeah, it's the only time that every single person's in the room together.
Yeah, it's like a board meeting.
It's the best opportunity for them to do that. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't weird for me. It never bothered me. But a lot of my friends would question it and be like, does that bother you? Is that weird? And I'm like, nope, kind of normal.
Yeah.
It's kind of just something that happens. And another thing is the sacrifice with owning your own business and working with family is like, there's no vacation.
Right.
You don't get a vacation. True. We go on a week vacation to Florida, but you're still emailing, which isn't a problem. It doesn't bother us as kids. It doesn't take her away as a mom, but it's something that a lot of other kids, I think, take for granted if their parent isn't someone that's in a position of like owning a company or being a CEO. They don't realize work, there's no 9 to 5, there's no clock in, clock out. It's when I wake up in the morning, and I'm sure this is your life. When I wake up in the morning, my first thought is, what do I have to do today for my business.
Well, and I think that that's true so much of so many people, whether they own a business or they don't own a business, and today's work environment is so different. I think, what's exciting about today and the technology we live in now is that anyone can start a business about the most niche possible thing. Like tomorrow, you could wake up and say, I want to focus on, I'm going to sell notebooks. That's it.
Yeah.
I'm going to be the notebook master because I love notebooks. I love the feel. I love the pages. I love everything about, I'm going to sell notebooks. And you could start a massive business selling notebooks. With family, I think, the interesting thing about it is all that weaving of relationships and emotion and, how to, when there's siblings that want to be a part of it and there's siblings that don't want to be a part of it, and how you navigate all of that, and it'd be really interesting to hear from people that also have family business and to see, like here's a good example too of knowing, as a child, number one, coming into a business that's been established by a parent, and as a child coming into it, now you have a set of expectations by everybody else around you. Yeah. And inevitably, if managed well, the parent will say, okay, you're going to work from the bottom up. There is no give me's here.
Yeah.
Like you've got to understand everything.
You've never been a give me person, so.
No, and hopefully, and it's hard. It's a balance between, every parent on the planet Earth that I know of that's, a decent parent wants what's best for their kid. They want to better their child's lives. That's the whole point, right?
But you don't want to just give the work away.
Right. And it's what does that look like?
Yeah.
To give a gift to your child doesn't mean that you're taking away accountability, you're taking away the pain, because that's a part of the learning and a part of the gift of life, is to overcome some of those things. But in, a business, it's interesting. So if you, whether the family members have started from the ground up a business together, or whether family comes into a business that's been established, there's that dynamic, and it never goes away. Here's the truth. No matter what we do, no matter how much you talk about it, it's the actions that matter to everybody else. So it is a human nature, I think, inevitable that the people in a business that aren't part of the blood that is the family will always feel. And I just don't think, and maybe I'm wrong, but there's a way to change that. And that is that those members of the family have to absolutely work 10 times harder.
Yeah.
You just have to.
Well, I mean, I don't necessarily, I've never had an experience with an employee of yours that's given me the feeling that I'm like being looked at as that's the kid of the boss. Mm-hmm. Here she goes, getting a job for free.
Right.
I don't feel like that's ever happened, but I'm sure in a lot of people's dynamics, maybe larger companies as well, because this is a much smaller, more close-knit company. Right. I'm sure in massive corporations that were started by families, there's tons of thoughts on that.
Oh, for sure.
Seeing the kid of the boss come in, or the kid of the owner of the company come in and being like, oh God, here we go. They're just going to get all the promotions. That's not how it is in our family at all. I feel like with you, when you first started, I'm sure Nana and Papa made you really work for it, especially because of the fact that you had put them through so much as a kid. Yes,
still working through that. Well, and that kind of segues into the next thing about like communication in families and kids, right?
Yeah.
Like what I think is it's so intriguing to me, because I look at even like our dynamic and growing up. So there were 3 of us, right? So I'm the oldest. Aunt Julie's the middle. Uncle Mike's the
And I'm going to interject here. Weirdest part about this is our family is the exact same order.
Yeah.
We have me, Sam, and Adam, and 2 girls and a boy in the same order. And our personalities, although they differ very severely in some areas, it's quite interesting to see the way that's laid out. Yeah. Because it's very similar. Sorry, I had to interject there.
Which is crazy. It's so weird.
Isn't that weird?
Because it's not like that was planned.
No.
It is really one of the most interesting things, because it almost follows the exact timeline.
Yep.
So, Nana and Papa had us a little bit earlier in life.
Yeah.
Only
but
by
that was
a few
normal.
years.
That was normal at that time, though.
But only by a few years.
Yeah.
And then what's really intriguing, what's going on with you. So, being one of 3, 2 girls and a boy, 2 to 2.5 years apart.
Yep.
Almost exactly the same ages.
Yep.
Where Nana and Papa, same thing. Mm-hmm. Or rather, Dad and I had you guys almost exactly the same without 1 ounce of planning.
Yep.
Like so weird. And then what's super interesting about that is how like now you're engaged at the same exact age.
That's super, super weird. And the weirdest part with that is when my mom told me about her meeting my dad, you guys met at a bar, correct?
Yes.
Weird. I also met my fiance at a bar. She told me that when she
not all
saw my dad, she knew that was going to be her husband. I cannot even begin to tell you guys exact same thing. And I told my friends the next day, they're like, you're crazy. You're crazy. And now all of them are like, how did you know?
Yeah,
I was like,
nuts.
I don't know. I couldn't tell you. Same exact thing with you. So weird.
It is weird.
That's a universe thing.
It is going to be.
And we got super off topic with that one, but it's just, I always think about that. Always think about that.
Yeah, it is bizarre. But how fate, whether you believe in that or not, or the path that you've been chosen to take, or it's almost like, I don't know, like how your mind. So completely jumping to a different topic, the law of attraction kind of thing. This idea that you can sit there and say, okay, money come to me, and all of a sudden it's going to come to me is ridiculous. However, here's something that blows my mind, and I love listening to all kinds of podcasts, which is why we're doing this, because I think they're cool, and there's so much information. I think people, just Joe average person, and we're like Joe average people, have some incredibly insightful things to share, and their stories are interesting because they align with other people.
Yeah,
right?
It's just interesting.
But some of the stuff I've listened to, like about thoughts and energy, right? So the way we think, that's energy. Energy is electricity happening in our brain, and we create this tangible thing that is energy, and that energy doesn't go away. So it's about the idea that when you think positively, and it's not like sitting there and just mantras of positivity that are going to make things happen. You have to take action.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't work like that. But when you surround yourself with positivity, positive thoughts, happiness, when you're looking at your life in terms of not what can I get, but what can I give, and because of that mindset, things come to you. That happens because you've created the energy, and energy attracts energy, right? Yeah. So when you think about families, I'm going to bring it on back.
We're bringing it back to the topic.
Bring it back. The idea is that your family isn't an option that you've chosen. You've been put there. Now, you've been put there maybe for a reason.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a plan, you're just not aware of it in the moment. And when things are difficult in a family, and let's face it, there are families that are just straight up evil. There are family members that are not good people, that maybe evil entered your bloodline. That is truth. Any human being on this planet Earth that abuses a child has no place in this world ever.
Yeah.
Should be, in my opinion, should be destroyed.
Yeah.
Abuse of a child is beyond. I can't comprehend it. My brain doesn't even allow myself to go there. But it exists. And it's, so the whole dynamic of when you talk about family, business, the family dynamics, interacting with people, there's reality that there are people within families that are not good people.
Yeah.
And so then now what? So if you're in a family tribe, which that is what it is, you have to make decisions.
Yeah.
You have to decide sometimes that I can't, even though this is blood, I can't allow it in my world. I can't allow it, because it's about that surrounding yourself with the positivity.
Energy.
And it is interesting, and I hope that the legacy for us and our family, and one of the things I leave, is the insight to have had the self-awareness to investigate this stuff, to understand that in raising kids, that we're not perfect, we make mistakes.
Yeah.
And that as a parent, the key is that you're thoughtful in the moments, and that the moments connect and create days, and those days and experiences create years, and that carries forward. So like in every moment you have an opportunity to teach a value, to share insight, to add value to the life of your child. And you can't control it though, right?
Yeah.
You can't control your kid. And meaning that you can apply discipline, but you can't say, this is the path you're going to take, and this is how you're going to do it, and this is what I want from you.
Yeah.
That's not how it works.
Yeah.
Right? So, losing my train of thought and like going on so many tangents. You know, the point being that when you're communicating, like knowing that families aren't perfect and knowing that there are these...
Well, and each individual person has a different perception of your words and the way that you speak.
Right.
That I think is a big one, because although you're raised the same way, each individual person has a very different way of perceiving, processing, and using that information.
For sure. And then it's like, where does that happen?
Yeah.
Is that an innate personality trait? Is it part of your soul? Is it because as a baby, like you're just taking in data in, because that's what it is. Like your brain's processing data. You know, and what the point I was going to make about that is the communication as a parent with a child and, you know, family members and such, especially in a work environment, is that those words do matter. Yeah. And so when you're communicating, it's one, understanding your child and how you guys process differently.
And each person.
And respecting that while still applying the same accountabilities and discipline, which equates to love, but also then realizing that you're going to make a mistake and it's okay. Yeah. But the two most powerful words a parent could ever say to your child is, I'm sorry. Yeah. You know, 100%. Because we do screw up. There are times when we screw up. It is what it is. Yeah. And being flawed and knowing that it's okay, because kids look at parents as they grow up as they're superheroes. You know, 100%. Human child's so dependent on a parent. Yeah. You know, and depending on the way a parent parents. Yeah. You know, a child is going to perceive them in a certain way up to an age, and then they become a little more self-aware, and then they start to realize, like, wait a minute, they're not perfect. Yeah. And that can be very scary for a child. So when, you know, as a parent, you're capable of communicating that truth and that, you know, parents aren't perfect, we make mistakes, and being able to say, I'm sorry. I think that has massive impact.
Well, I feel like that's very imperative when you work with family. Yes. And I'm sure that you, Nana, and Papa have had many situations where you've had to tell them, look, I didn't like the way you just said that to me. And I'm sure that you guys have had circumstances where you've had some disagreements on how things were said.
Yes, absolutely.
And you know, when we were kids, I am so sorry to my parents because I was an emotional teenager. Everything would make me cry. I can't even tell you how many times I would cry. And it's so different for me and my siblings. Adam and Sam are nowhere near like that. And so you guys had to adjust the way that you spoke to me in order to not to like coddle me and make it so that I didn't feel upset, but to say like, hey, not everything has to make you this emotional.
Yeah. Well, we talked a lot about being sympathetic and sensitive versus being affected.
Yeah, and imagine if you wouldn't have ever done that, and imagine me going into a workplace, which, by the way, I have worked for other people before I started working for her, which I needed to do. If I wouldn't have worked for someone else, I don't think I would have gained the skills I need in order to suck it up and just do things, because number one, I'm very shy, as much as it might not seem like I am. I'm extremely shy. I had very bad anxiety as a kid, and it's just, there's a lot of things I had to overcome. And if I wouldn't have had to be forced to be in the positions I was in, I imagine what I would be like.
Yeah. Well, and
I'd be crying at everything.
Yes, you would.
Goodness.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that that is tough too as a parent, because it's like, especially when you have multiple kids, right? So you guys still today, and you do this all the time.
Oh,
and
God.
You know, it's the whole,
I know what she's going to say.
Who's your favorite?
Hey,
you know?
If we could turn this camera around and you guys could see all the pictures of my brother in this room. She hates when I do this to her. We're joking with her too when we say this, but it's just, she gets so mad at that because she doesn't have favorites. There's no favorites. We're very aware that there's no favorites, Mom. But it's just funny when you look at her office and there's like, I don't know, maybe eight photos of my brother over there. There's another section of all of his athletic photos. And then there's one picture of me and my sister as a kid.
That's only because I haven't had a chance to print out really good pictures.
She gets so upset when
But then, it's also like compensation for, it's funny because when you were a baby, I have like 5 journals.
Oh, I know.
Right?
You have so many things.
And then with Sam, I might have like 1. And then Adam, I got Jack. Because, life changes, right? It is what it is. And, all 3 kids have different personalities. And this is true of any parent that has multiple children. You have different personalities. And you might have some more heavier traits on dad's side than my side. And
I
so
definitely feel like I do.
what's interesting is this sometimes similarities create like two magnets there, and it totally depends. Like growing up, Papa and I are very much alike. And I swear to God, I think I'm more dude than I am chick because I'm not
100%.
I'm very much of a thought process like a guy.
Yeah.
Which there's definitely different ways of thinking, there are differences there just are, and I'm very I can be very non-emotional about things.
100%.
I can very much contain, and what I used to, and it's funny because Dad, who's a man's man, like Mr. Firefighter dude,
construction,
is far
all
more
that.
sensitive,
Way more
than I am,
and I get that from him.
and it's funny because I'll be like, dude, put it in a box. Like, wrap that up. Tape it up. Throw that away.
And I'm sure he reacted the exact same way that I did as a kid, because she used to say these things to me and I'd be like, you just don't get it.
Yeah.
You don't understand. You'll never know what it feels like. And then I look back now as an adult and I'm like, she was right.
Yeah, it's it's looking at things like, okay, so we face problems, we face challenges, we face feelings. Make sure you put that little creature in the right size box. Don't let it grow out of control.
Well, and you know what's interesting? This comes right back to family and business, because if you work with family, you have to control those type of things. You can't be showing up to work all emotional, crying to your mom, because then the person in the office next to you is going to be like, this is ridiculous.
Well, and you know what's the worst about that? Is that because it is family, and especially when you have a close family.
Yeah.
Right? So we have a very close-knit
Very
family.
close.
So when I would get into an argument, it would be a strategic argument. And so I pride myself in being controlled and being thoughtful and, being very self-aware. Mm-hmm. But if I'm also intense.
Oh,
and
very.
So, anyone.
If you don't know her well, you can be
like,
very intimidated sometimes.
Yes. So I'm very intense about things, especially if I'm passionate about it.
Yeah.
And I don't realize, that's how it comes across. And so Papa can also be extremely intense. And so when we would talk about things and disagree on a strategy or whatever, this should be just a strategic conversation. Like, let's go through it.
Yeah.
No. Like, I would not be able to control it. I'd be like bawling my eyes out.
He'd say something to you, it'd set you off, and you can't hold it in, which is
I was
interesting.
frustrated.
It's interesting because you've worked for other people too, and I'm sure when you were in those environments, you would have never.
No, I
would have
didn't.
never. You would have contained yourself.
Some people do. Some people do. Like, they're very impacted and they get upset, and that's just the emotion that comes out. I never had that feeling with any other, and the handful of jobs I had before working for Nana and Papa, it was just the family dynamic.
Yep.
So I would be like, how do I get this point across without crying, because I'm so pissed and frustrated and I can't articulate it.
That happened to me the other day. Like, I feel that way all the time, where I'm starting to cry. I'm like, why am I crying?
Right.
Or like I try to present something to my mom, and this happens a lot less with my mom than it does other people, because I'm way more comfortable with her than other people. But like with my Papa, for example, he has a very specific way of speaking, and a lot of times he perceives things differently than they were intended to be perceived. And he had perceived something that I had said incorrectly, and he had made a comment that upset me. But I allowed my emotion to completely take over, and I had to get up and walk out. I was crying in the kitchen. My Nana's thinking I'm all sad. Really, I'm not sad. I'm frustrated because I can't express myself. She's trying to hug me to make me feel better, saying, oh, I'm so sorry. But that's not what I needed. What I needed was stop crying and figure out how the heck you need to say this.
Yeah.
And I could not get myself to contain it, because it's your grandpa. And it was about business. It's your grandpa, and you want him sometimes to be just your grandpa, not grandpa, but also one of the owners of the companies.
That is such a good segue to a point. So in business and family, that is really a tough one, because there are times where it's like, can you just be mom right now?
Just close the business book and bring out the mom book.
Right.
And then, when that boundary is so crossed all the time and it's almost like it's melted together.
Yeah.
Now there's no separation. And that's the part that I think is the most difficult for people that work in family business, especially when it's been 30 years of family business.
Yeah.
Because it's now melted together. There is no separation. And so there's some circumstances, for example, when I spoke to my Papa, I was making a joke and he took it as serious, and it was related to business, so he reacted in a business manner. Mm-hmm. Very cold, very, well, just don't work for us then. And it's like, well, that's not what I meant.
Yeah.
I was trying to make a joke.
Right.
And that's where it sets you off and you're like, wow, okay, now that I'm involved with the business, I really got to think about the way that I present things, who I'm speaking to, and you have to process their response differently than you would as it coming from just Papa, or
that
as it
is
coming
incredible
from just
insight.
Mom.
And that is incredible insight, and it's something you should be proud of having, because not everyone has that kind of wisdom to see it and that self-awareness, because that is so true. And one of the things you find is like you have to predicate the statement with the intent.
Yes.
And sometimes you have to actually say it out loud. Like intent is one thing, but intent is silent.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to actually articulate it so that you frame up the next statement appropriately, and the response is then productive.
Well,
right?
and for me, as being an extremely emotional being, that's always how I've been. It's very hard for me when I'm in a professional setting that is not my family. I was working in student apartments where people my mom's age were calling me the B word, yelling in my face, screaming at me about who knows what, and I was able to handle it. There was no crying. There was no needing to walk away. There was definitely some times where I got shaky voice, but like when it's my mom or my papa or my nana saying it, it's like, that's my family, so I feel... For some reason,
you're vulnerable.
My wall is down, so the crying just happens.
Yeah,
there's no stopping it. And I know after the fact, like when this happened, I looked back and I'm thinking to myself, that from the outside was so ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like if I were to look at myself as someone from the outside, I'd think, get it together.
Right.
What are you doing? Why are you crying? What are you crying about? Speak your
Right.
mind. But in the moment, it's like you're so overcome with emotion and it's your family that you're like, I cannot hold this back.
Yeah.
So now I got to walk away. Now I look like the person that went and cried. And you think about that stuff, which is weird because most people in family dynamics don't think about it that way. They're like, I cried in front of my grandpa. What's the problem?
Right.
But when you're working with them, you're like, well, I have to have, there's an impression I'm making.
And then where's the line?
Yeah.
So sometimes, and maybe this is a good point to make and good advice, because this is what it ties to, like if spouses work in a business together. And so the difference actually with Nan and Papa and then Dad and I is that Dad's a firefighter. We don't share a business life. Thank you, Jesus, because that would not work out. And being self-aware enough to know that wouldn't be a good idea.
Yeah.
But it's, in our marriage, for example, we set ground rules. So ground rules meaning that we care enough about our future. We wrote a mission statement. We have our value statement. We defined what was acceptable and unacceptable behavior in our interactions.
Which most people don't do this, Mom. And I think this is why a lot of people have failed marriages.
I would agree. And I think the time we spend invested in that, as dorky and corny as that may sound, it's made a difference. I refer back to it all the time.
Yeah.
And it's set in motion a ritual that became the rules of our family. So if you think about that for a second, the rituals that we live our life by, rituals also equal brands, right, in a business. So oftentimes it's the rituals and the culture of the company that creates the brand.
Yeah.
The rituals and the culture of our family, especially our immediate family, are very much about how we treat each other.
Yeah.
And that, going back, I mean, there's one thing and a habit that I formed because we didn't with Nan and Papa. It's just the way we were. Is that there isn't a time I hang up the phone with you guys I don't say I love you.
Yep, never.
It doesn't matter if you're walking in the door or you're sitting.
And I'm gonna see her 5 minutes later.
I say I love you, and it is to me a critically important ritual that I will never ever ever stop doing.
But I'll never forget it as a kid.
Right.
You don't see that very often.
Right.
And when I would see other kids' families and they'd leave and they didn't say love you, I'm like, that's weird.
Yeah.
Like in my head, I was like, that's weird.
Yeah.
Like I've never, and my brother, he's like macho man, like football player, bro. Like he's a true Texas bro. And he'll be around his entire friend group. Love you, Mom.
Yep. He
no
has no
fear
hesitation
in the world. And everyone's like, look at this kid. I'm like, that's a kid that loves his mom, okay?
Yeah.
You can make fun of him all you want, but that's a kid that has values and loves his mom. And I think that's cool because none of us kids ever looked at that as weird. Adam probably would tell you the same thing.
No,
He'd
he
think
never
it's
thinks
just
about
totally normal.
Doesn't they? And the fact that I call him monkey and I say I love you, monkey, in front of everybody. And the thing is that having the awareness to know that if it did upset him, if that were something that had impact in a negative way, I certainly wouldn't do it. So I don't do that because that gives me power. I do it because that's how I feel. And that's what we do. I call you Peanut and I call Sam Sweet Pea.
Well, and it's interesting because like I'm thinking about it now. Did Nana and Papa have anything that embarrassed you that they brought into the workplace? Was it because I know Nana and Papa are a lot different?
And no, and I'll say why. Partly because of my personality.
Oh, you can't be embarrassed. I forgot.
The way that I operate is that
there's no sense
I remove
of
all possibility of embarrassment by throwing it out there in the beginning. So I'm going to be raw for a second. I think farts and poop are hilarious. I find that absolutely hilarious. Nana, on the other hand, finds it repulsive and disgusting, and I'm the spawn of the devil because she has no idea where the hell that sense of humor came from.
It's so funny how differently though that you grew up with Nana than me with you, because we have like sparkly poop ornaments that people have gifted to my mom for her birthday. Her employees,
a shrine of poo.
Her employees decorated her personal bathroom for her birthday. She's got probably every toy that poops that you could ever imagine, and it's normal. And we think it's funny. We laugh at it. But my Nana is so opposite. She'll get up in a restaurant if you're talking about farts. She refuses to be around you if you say that word.
Well, and as a child, I distinctly remember her walking out and be like,
so
I
yeah,
can't
that was a dumb question on my part, because you don't get embarrassed.
No, I don't. And again, and part of that is overcoming my own insecurities, because we all have them. So my way of navigating insecurity was like, all right, well, throw it out there. Put yourself at risk. Throw it out there. Make it funny. Let people laugh with you, not at you.
Yeah.
And then whatever. Like, there's nothing. If I trip and fall in front of public, I'm like, woohoo, 10.
I wish I got that trait.
But part of that too came from it's almost like being an actress for a little bit. And it's not in life, you don't want to fake it till you make it in terms of lying to yourself.
Yeah.
But when you say fake it till you make it in terms of overcoming your fears of some things, it works. So if you wake up in the morning and say, I don't feel happy today, well, smile.
Yeah.
Force it.
Yeah.
Get in that mirror, smile at yourself. Think of, pull from within things that make you smile and laugh. And what used to make me smile and laugh is making fun of myself. I thought that was hilarious because I'm a dork, and there's all, everything from appearance, like the Yoda ears and the big nose and things like that. They make me laugh. I think it's funny.
Yeah.
Thanks God, you gave me Dumbo ears. I love it. Laughing about things that could be embarrassing. Who hasn't accidentally farted in public? But if you think if you find humor in that, you're not mortified by it, right? Which
I was as a kid.
Because we are flawed.
Yeah.
We are absolutely flawed.
Because I was going to say, when we were talking about that, the whole you calling out a monkey thing, bringing that into a business setting, I'm trying to think, because that's something
there's a time and a place.
Because you call me Peanut too,
right.
Here, but it's not something that embarrasses me. It's just interesting, the dynamic, because your boss would never call you Peanut.
No.
But this is my boss, and she calls me Peanut. So it's weird. It's this weird blend of knowing that we're family, but also knowing that we're working together.
And you will have that cutover. I'm as comfortable saying, hey, Peanut, as I am saying, hey, get in here, we got to talk about this.
Yeah.
It's also time and place. So it's knowing if we were sitting with a client, let's say, I'm not calling you Peanut, but I have no problem talking openly about the fact we're family. And that's another interesting thing about family dynamics in business is I have worked with small businesses where it's family, but they won't
tell you. Yeah.
They don't admit it, and they refer to each other by first name, and
that's weird.
And that's okay.
It is.
I'll say in our business, I have said Richard and Maddie, Nana and Papa's first name, but it's uncomfortable for me.
Yeah.
I like mom and dad better.
Yeah.
And so when we are out there, and we're in an industry that helps people with disabilities and hearing loss and things along those lines, so there's a different dynamic to it. But I also feel like you can create those lines and those rules and those rituals in your business and your family based on what feels right. So for us, it feels right. So there were times, and now Papa doesn't travel with me, but when we do presentations together, we were very much, it was the road show.
Yeah.
It was this is my lovely assistant dad, and it was funny, and it endeared people to us.
I was going to say, do you think
business.
it brought people more interested
for
in the business?
Sure. 100%. But it was all about the execution of that.
I was going to say, because I think a lot of people with family businesses are afraid that it's going to discredit.
Yes. And I disagree with that to some extent, because I think it's all relative to, one, if you don't have what it takes, like if you're not an expert in your field and you're out there saying you are, and then you're playing the whole family dynamic, that doesn't work necessarily.
Yeah.
But, if you're a credible business, you know what you're doing, you're adding value, and that's part of your culture and your ritual, then be it.
Yeah.
Be true to what you are, So I think that makes a big difference. So where are we at time-wise?
We're at like 50 minutes.
Oh, all right. So we're getting there.
We're doing good.
So I think we can wrap up this whole topic of family and business with something that might segue into a next conversation. And that's about like establishing accountabilities, and in not just in a family business, because accountabilities are universal. Like raising your kids, and again, going back to the dynamic of family, when you have multiple children, let's say, and every child processes differently, and every child responds to a certain form of discipline differently. Every child responds to the words you choose to use, the tone of the voice you use differently. Like how you establish accountabilities that align with the strengths of each individual child. And being okay with the fact that there's no cookie cutter approach to that. Right?
Well, and every child's going to react, respond, and process differently. So it's a matter of, how do I instill the same level of accountability from this one to this one?
Right.
And also tying that into the business, we'll talk about this most likely next time, but when you have children in different age groups that have seen different parts of your journey, how do you instill the same accountability from the kid that saw you in poverty to the kid that only saw you as successful? Do you know what I mean? And while we never saw poverty as kids, I've seen a huge difference in growth from when I was younger, when you were in the business, to now. There's a huge difference in the growth of your position and what you do and the stuff that you've taken on and your ideas. There's a huge difference. So it's about, how does all children have the same level of accountability and the same level of responsibility when it comes to themselves, and not necessarily monetary always, but just accountability in general.
Yeah, it is.
As a whole.
It's interesting, and I think that I found, and we'll wrap on this, because I want to next time talk about the funniest stories in family. I think because every family has some freaking hilarious stories. But I think for our family, one of the things that I found was super effective was humor.
100%.
Was humor. Like pulling that into everything that we would do, even if there was misbehavior and we had to address it, doing it with a sense of calm, loving discipline, but humor on the back end.
And everything's a lesson.
Yeah. Everything was an opportunity to learn. All right, cool. Well, with that, we're going to wrap up this episode of The Red Notebook talking about family, faith, and business. This is Michele Allman and
Alex Allman.
And thank you so much for listening. Stay tuned. This will grow and expand into different conversations about all kinds of different stuff. But we're on the family theme right now, family and business. And we'd love to hear from you guys. Also hear about what you want to talk about, your own stories. That'd be super cool.
Absolutely. Give us a like. Comment down below any ideas you have for us, and make sure to subscribe and ring the notification bell, because when you get the notifications, it'll tell you when these come live, so you can watch them once we post them.
All this fabulousness. All right, thanks for watching and listening. Adios.
Peace.